Cowabunga, dude! Yeah, I spent a chunk of time messing around with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga Collection. This was put out by Konami, which was why I was a little bit hesitant to jump on it until some user reviews are in, because Konami, to just quote James Stephanie Sterling, Konami is Konami and Konami is the worst. But even when doing some collections of some of their older stuff, they've botched it in some way. So I wanted to be certain that that wasn't the case before I even thought about getting my hands on this. And also, thank you to the Patreon supporter who decided to gift me this particular game on Steam. That was very generous of you. But thankfully, the game does work, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun for me as someone who is nostalgic very directly for a fair number of these games and for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in general. This is not a product that I would recommend to anyone who did not grow up playing these games. If you want to get a more modern, updated experience that's in the vein of these, just play Shredder's Revenge. I already did a review on it. So that has all the modern touches and modern quality of life conveniences, sorts of things that that you would want, from something that still evokes an older era of gaming. Actually going back and playing these games as is if you choose to. I'll come back to that. That's a very different experience. And if you don't have nostalgia, a lot of these are going to be like, why would anyone, why? No. But if you've got that nostalgia, it's a good time. Now, I hadn't played all of these. I had played the actual arcade version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I never got any far in it because it's an arcade game. It was designed to absolutely destroy you, so you pump more quarters into it. I did play the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to the arcade game on the NES, but that was obviously a port and downgraded, whatever. But I'd also never played the arcade versions of Turtles in Time. I'd never played Hyperstone Heist because I didn't have a Genesis. I'd never played any of the 3 Game Boy games. There were versions of Tournament Fighters besides the SNES one that I knew and loved that I hadn't played, like the version on the Genesis or the version on the NES of all things. And those are all here and all available, along with the ones that I did play a fair amount growing up. The original NES game, the port of the arcade game on the NES, Manhattan Project, Turtles in Time, boy, did I play the crap out of that, and the SNES version of Tournament Fighters. And they're all pretty much as I remember them, warts and all. And actually, there's some warts that my brain had kind of glossed over and forgotten about. That's one of the things about going back for especially, things that you're nostalgic about in general, but especially video games. There's so many things back then that either they were acceptable back then, or you just forgot were the case by the sheer passage of time, that you play now and you're like, oh boy, why did we ever put up with this? But again, if you have that nostalgia, you'll still find stuff that you love. And there are some options that I would consider these to be accessibility options that are greatly appreciated. So it's both good and a little bit weird. On a fair number of these games, before going into it, you can basically tweak some of the settings, basically to determine whether this is exactly as it was originally, or do you want a little different? Do you want more lives than this would normally give you? Do you want infinite lives? In the case of the NES games, do you still want the slowdown and the screen flicker that happens when multiple sprites are rendered on the screen? If you don't want that, you can turn them off so it plays smoother and doesn't have the flicker. In some of the games, you can even turn on a God mode, which enables you to basically take no damage and you one-hit kill standard enemies and some of the earlier bosses. And is that a cheat? Yeah, it's called God mode. But you know what? As somebody who was never going to beat the arcade game fair and square, because again, it's designed to be unfair, yeah, I really appreciated that because it allowed me to see all the content that was in that. Same with the Turtles in Time arcade version. Same with the TMNT to port, the TMNT 2 arcade game, the port on the NES, because I had gotten to the last boss on that legitimately when I was a kid, but I could never beat him. And honestly, I kind of just wanted to go through and re-experience the levels, the layouts, the bosses, and I can do that without feeling like I'm being ground into the dirt. And I can just kind of just go on a nostalgia trip. Just it's like being a tourist, in my own childhood, and I kind of love that. Again, not all the games have it. The original NES version, while you can fix the screen flicker and the slowdown, doesn't have a God mode, which, given how brutally difficult that game was, is an odd omission. And I don't think there's a God mode on the Game Boy games either. And I'm not sure why. I don't know if it just had to do with the way they were coded originally. Because at a guess, I suspect the rest of these games that do have a God mode probably actually had that built into the original code of the game, so that it could be turned on for playtesting purposes, so that when you're not testing for game balance, but instead just trying to get through everything to make sure everything is happening and nothing's glitching out or crashing the game, and you just want to get through it. I would not be surprised if most of those games already had a God mode built into them somehow for the playtesters when they were doing certain kinds of bug testing. However, the ones that don't have it, which would be the much more simplified ones, which would be the original NES and the Game Boy games, yeah, if it wasn't already built into the code, I don't see Konami doing the time or taking doing the work or taking the time to add those in. They're just not the kind of company that's going to do that. So that's my uneducated suspicion as to why God mode is not available on all of them, or why, say, in Turtles 3 on the NES, the Manhattan Project, why it takes the form of infinite lives instead of just a flat-out God mode. That's probably how it was built into the original code. But again, that's a suspicion on my part. But honestly, playing through with God mode on games that I either hadn't played before and probably would just get my butt kicked by, or games that I had played before but had never beaten, or I just wanted to re-experience the game in a relaxed way, in an oh yeah way, without having that frustration of dying before I get to see the end. That's a real nice feature. That's real nice. I kind of wish I honestly kind of wish more games in general had it. I know that'll never happen because hardcore gamers, they get up in arms about just an easy mode, a God mode you could just turn on. Oh, they would lose it. But I appreciate it, especially on a re-release of old games like this, for someone who is nostalgic and whose memories and reaction time. I don't have everything memorized anymore. My reaction time is not what it was when I was younger. It's like, let me just have fun. Let me just enjoy this. And this lets me do that. By far, still, favorite game in this is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 Turtles in Time, the SNES version. That one I didn't need God mode for. I can still beat that. Well, currently on normal. I used to be able to beat that on the hardest difficulty. I used to do that to unwind. That's how much I used to play that game. It's still real good. I think it's easily the best one. It's definitely the one that Shredder's Revenge took the most direct pulls from in terms of mechanically how it works and some of the specifics, whether it's the bashing the foot soldiers back and forth, throwing them at the screen, the nature of some of the bosses or whatnot. It just, that one, if any of them comes close to actually holding up, it's that one. But even that, I'd say if you have no nostalgia, you'll probably have a better time with Shredder's Revenge. But that was real fun to replay. And Tournament Fighters is also really good. It's a lot harder than I remember being. Like, even setting it down to the lowest difficulty, I get my butt kicked a fair bit in that. The computer is frustratingly good at blocking in that game. And God, if I have it set at the default difficulty setting, the one, what the equivalent of normal, like, I know some people just say get good, but like, No, this seems excessive. I'm getting my butt kicked in the second fight the way I would expect in most tournament fighters to be getting my butt kicked in the 6th fight. It's just, it's still fun. Because, like, it's gorgeous, and the music in so many of these is so good. Like, yes, of the time, 8-bit, 16-bit sound, but boy, both the visuals, but especially a lot of the music, that hit me in the nostalgia hard. I got exactly what I wanted out of this. I got a fun kick of nostalgia. I got to experience some games or some versions of games that I hadn't before. And that was just nice. And now I have that. When I'm in the mood, I can just revisit these things now. That's just nice. Like for someone who has been gaming since, I guess, 88 was about when I got my own Nintendo to have in the home. So 34 years worth of gaming. This is real nice. So if you've got nostalgia, it's a little pricey for old games, but it is a lot of them. I think maybe wait for a Steam sale, but I think if you have actual nostalgia for these, you'll probably get what you want out of this collection. Have you played this? Even if you haven't played this new collection, do you have nostalgia? Have you played any of those old games? What was your favorite? What ones drove you crazy? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon's what pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't support me that way, like, share, subscribe also help, but don't worry too much about that either. Try and take a relaxed attitude around here so you can just come on back next time you need a break. Why did I, weird wink? What am I doing? What was that? Cowabunga! End credits, that means I need to shout out my top Patreon supporters. Robin Moore, Zupin Lutfula, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Linda Walters, Emu Delkey, Leotha Boyd, Toy Loli, Becky Sparks, Renabi Likes the Poodle, Zach, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Adam RDL Taylor, Shay Lagourlay, Brendan LaRose, and TT. Thank you so much for your support. You can get your name in the credits too by checking out the rewards on the Patreon. You only tried to eat my earring once this time. That's much better.